Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together in Daf Nun Aleph Amud Beis. Starting with Daf Nun Aleph Amud Aleph, 5 lines from the bottom. The Gemara just had told us that Rabbi Bar Chana traveled from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. And in Eretz Yisrael they would eat a certain type of chaylev that was permissible. Me'ikar adin is permissible. However, in Bavel they had the custom not to eat such chaylev. So when he was eating that chaylev, and he saw people approaching him, then he covered it up. He didn't want them to see that he was then eating that chaylev in the vicinity of Bavel, where they are noyeg not to eat such chaylev. The Gemara now says, Omar le Rabbi Bar Chana lebrei. He told his son, Bini, lo toichal lo mifonai v'lo lo befonai. You shall not eat this type of chaylev. Again, me'ikar adin is permissible, not in front of me, and not when it's not in my presence either. I myself, who saw the great sage Rabbi Yochanan in Eretz Yisrael eating such chaylev, therefore I am permitted to eat such chaylev, whether it's in his presence or without his presence. Ato, however, you, lo yirah oisa, you did not see him. Lo toichal bein befonai, bein shaloi befonai. You shall not eat, not in my presence, not in without my presence. The Gemara now brings what seems to be a contradiction in the words of Rabbi Bar Chana. Upliga didei adidei. However, there's a contradiction, a argument within his words themselves, because the Omer Rabbi Bar Chana Sachli Rabbi Yochanan ben Elazar. He says that Rabbi Yochanan ben Elazar told him the following: Pam achas nichnasti acha Rabbi Shimon beRabbi Yosi beRabbi ben Lekunyo legina. I walked after this sage in the gardens in the Gina on top of Nun Aleph Amud Beis. We're talking about in Eretz Yisrael. V'nota sviche kruv v'ochal, and he took the aftergrowths of the cabbage that were growing there in that garden, and he ate it. Now, it was the shvis, and in shvis, it's permissible to eat. What we can't do is we cannot plow, we cannot plant, we cannot reap, but to eat regularly would be normal. Now, over here, we're talking about the aftergrowth, something that was not planted. So the Gemara is going to explain this behavior. But al kopanim, it says that he did eat the cabbage that was growing over there, the aftergrowth of the cabbage. We're talking about the leaves that were growing on the stalks of these cabbages. And he ate it. V'nasan li, and he gave it to me. V'omar li, and he said to me, B'ni, b'fonai ochol, shelo b'fonai lo toicha. Before me, in my presence, you can eat it. However, if I'm not here, then you cannot eat it. I myself saw Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai eating such sviach of the kruv, and therefore I may eat it even when it's not in his presence, certainly in his presence. But you, you can only eat it in fafanai, in my presence, but not when I'm not present. So here we're left with what seems to be a conflicting statement, because Rabbi Bar Chana said to his son, you shall not eat it neither in my presence nor without my presence, because you didn't witness the great sage Rabbi Yochanan eating it like I did. Here we, however, see that he was told that the one who saw Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai himself, so he can eat it whether it's in the presence of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai or not. But one who did not see it, he can go ahead and eat it only in his presence. So again, that's contradictory to what Rabbi Bar Chana himself said to his son, who said, you cannot even in my presence. Now the Gemara wants to understand Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, who did eat this, and he was the example of doing so, this sviach kruv. Gemara wants to understand his opinion. My Rabbi Shimon, what is Rabbi Shimon? What is this opinion that he was eating the kruv, the aftermath of the kruv, on the 7th year in the Shemitah? The Tanya, it states in the Brisa, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Kol hasvichin asurin, chut misvichei kruv. All after growth cannot be eaten. However, the after growth of kruv could be eaten. Why? She'ein ki yoytze behem b'yerek hasad. He says the kruv is unique. Why? Because unlike all of the other roots that go into the ground, they decay, and therefore they are something that is not going to be permissible to ultimately eat. Because what happens is when it comes to the Shemitah, the rule is like this. Anything that can be still eaten by chayos on the field, that can be eaten by a private person in his own house, and he can even feed his own behemoths with. But if it's finished in the fields, he can no longer partake in this type of species of fruit or vegetable. So over here, when it comes to the normal aftergrowth of the roots themselves go into the ground and they die, and therefore they're no longer permissible to eat. However, the kruv, even though it goes into the ground, that root never dies, and therefore it's always available throughout the entire year, whereby a person can continue eating such a species. So he says like this, unlike the other species, she'en kayot ben b'yerek hasodeh, this is different, the kruv. And therefore it was permitted for him to eat the sviche kruv. So why the Chachamim argue on this? The Chachamim call sfichin asurin. They don't make a distinction. They say all sfichin, including the sviche hakruv, is also going to be asur. Gemara explains, V'travayu alibad Rabbi Akiva. They both follow the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, both Rabbi Shimon and the Chachamim, who say that the svichim is asur, any aftergrowth is asur to eat on the Shemitah. Everybody agrees to that. The only disagreement is the sviche hakruv. The Tanya, it says in the following brayso explaining the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Hein, behold, it says in the pasuk, Lo nizra v'lo nesoif eis es tuasenu. How will we eat? One will declare, perhaps, when it comes to the Shemitah year, the 7th year, when we will not plant, and we will not then gather together any of our grain. People might ask that question. So Rabbi Akiva had a question on this pasuk. Rabbi Akiva, granted, it says we will not sow. But why does it also add we will not gather in our grain? Once you're not sowing, then you're not going to be gathering grain. So why was that added? Why was it necessary in the pasuk to say we will not be ne'esaf? That's already understood. Says Rabbi Akiva, Mikan, from here we learn, L'svichin shehin asurin, that the aftergrowths, those are asur. In other words, the pasuk is saying we will not plant new type of plantings, and we will not gather together the aftergrowths either. On both counts, they're asur, even the aftergrowth, even the sfichin. So everybody agrees to that, including the Chachamim, together with Rabbi Shimon. Aftergrowth sfichim is asur. What are they arguing again? They're arguing about the exception about the kruv aftergrowth, the sfiche kruv. But my kamiflagi, Rabbanan sovar gazun sfiche kruv otashar sfiche nama. The Rabbanan say we make a gezerah. We're concerned if we allow people to eat the sfiche kruv, they might come to eat the other sfichim also. Rabbi Shimon sovar lois gazun sfiche kruv otu sfiche da'alma. Whereas Rabbi Shimon is not concerned about that, and therefore he says the sfiche kruv is permitted, and therefore that's their machlekes. The Gemara now quotes the Seif of the Mishnah that states that when a person travels from one place to another before Pesach, if he goes from the Mokom where he is situated in, and there they do malacha, and he then goes to a place on Erev Pesach before Chatzos where they do not do malacha, the Mishnah says he takes on the stringency. The Mishnah goes on to say that similarly in the other direction, if he's from a place where they do not do malacha, and he goes to a place where they do malacha before Chatzos on Erev Pesach, then it also says, Al Meshane, he shall not deviate from the Mokom. The Gemara is going to point out, but that seems to be a contradiction to what the Mishnah says, because it says you should be astringent on both counts. Says the Mishnah, says the Gemara. Bishlo maha holech mi mokom she'oisin lemokom she'ein oisin noisin alav chumrei mokom she'holach l'shon ba'al yishana odem b'nei ha'machlekes v'lo li'avid. The Gemara says that's very well when it comes from a person who leaves a place where there they do malacha on Erev Pesach before Chatzois. So when he goes to a new place where they do not do malacha, so then it says Al Yishane, do not deviate from the minhag hamokom, whereby it says that he should take on the stringency of the minhag hamokom. That's very well. That's going to then fit very good because he's going to a place where they're machmir. So therefore he should not deviate from their chumrah and their minhag, whereby he should not do malacha. However, says the Gemara, what about the other scenario? But if he goes from a place where they do not do malacha, and now he finds himself in a place on Erev Pesach before Chatzos where they are doing malacha, it states Al Yishane Odem Bnei Machlekes V'Navid. You should not deviate from the minhag hamokom, and therefore you should come to then do the malacha. You should do malacha there. Amris asked the Gemara, but the Mishnah states that you should be machmir and do the stringency. So it comes out to be an internal contradiction within the Mishnah itself. In this latter scenario, if you were to then follow the minhag hamokom and go ahead and do malacha, that would not be the stringent view. Answers the Gemara, Amar Abaye, Aresha. Abaye says, En hochanami. This statement is only going on the ratio. And therefore, in the ratio, when it says Al Yishane in the Mishnah, it's going on the ratio. One who goes from a place where he does malacha to a place where he does not do malacha, then Al Yishane, he shall not change from the minhag hamokom, and he should then be stringent. That's what it's referring to. Rava argues and says, La'olam ha-seifa. It is going on the Sefer too, even in the case that we quoted as saying that he goes from a place where they do not do malacha, and he now finds him in a place where they do malacha. Even there, it's true. And therefore, even there, he'll be stringent. What about it saying, Al Yishane minhag hamokom, because of a ma'ore machlekes? Says Rav, it's not going to ma'ore machlekes. There's not going to be a problem of machlekes. Why? Because Michael Amris, what are you going to say? Haroye Oimer, the one who the onlooker, who sees that this fellow is not doing malacha like everybody else. What's he going to say? Malacha asura, that is prohibited to do malacha, and that's why he's not doing malacha. It's going to ma'er machlekes? No. Miyeh ma'om amre. People will say, including him, kama batloni have b'shukah. How many batlonim there are in the shuk? And he's one of the batlonim. And the fact that he's not doing malacha is not a proof that there's an Easter malacha whereby me'ore machlekes. He's just somebody's not doing malacha. And therefore, indeed, over here, this person can take the stringency, even though in his makom, they go ahead and they do not do malacha, right? And this place they do malacha. He can refrain from doing malacha and follow the stringency of his minhag hamokom from where he belongs.